Welcome back to yet another episode of Justice League Revisited, the podcast that explores one of the best, if not the very best, cartoon series, animated shows out there, Justice League. And now we're into Justice League Unlimited. We're well into that, and we're so excited because that opens up our world for a whole new line of guests, both behind the scenes and on the mic. On the other side of the mic, the other side of the Zoom screen, if you will, my wonderful co-host, the voice of Wonder Woman, Susan Eisenberg. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Good to see you.
You too. You too. It's always exciting that we get to go back and hang out with the Justice League, and this is what I'm especially excited about.
I know, me too, because this is the guy who always teased me and said that Justice League only got good when Justice League Unlimited happened because he got involved. So I'm really excited for today's show because, as you all know, I talk about him all the time. He's a good friend, and I adore him. And he is Green Arrow, Kin Shriner, we've got today. So that's exciting.
Probably one of our most requested guests as we were kind of finishing off Justice League. That's probably the one we got the most, hey, you're going to have Kin on, right? Because so many people wanted to talk about Green Arrow and hear his stories and working on the show. So, and plus we're going to talk soap operas, which I know, Susan, that's in your wheelhouse, I think.
Okay, how long have I waited? How long have I been patient? I have been patiently waiting for the soap opera conversation since we started this podcast. And thankfully, you're a daytime fan. So I'm not going to be alone with the questions.
Oh, no. I've got questions regarding daytime stuff, too. So we'll try to keep it a nice even mix, maybe 60-40, just so our fans are like, what is this? But obviously, if they're fans of Kin's, they'll know him from his many soap opera roles. We'll talk about all that. So I guess without further ado, let's go ahead and have our page go over and get him from the green room. Hey, Larry, could you go? Yeah, no, tell him we're ready for him. Yeah, okay. Yeah, he can bring the whole picture with him. That's fine. Here he is, live in studio. So excited. My Green Arrow, Kin Shriner. Thank you so much for your time today.
They had nothing in that green room. There was nothing in there. There was not even peanuts. No. Yes, I'm here. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you for being here. This is so exciting. And I know, I know you and Susan are really good friends. You have lunch together. I'm so jealous. But she was very kind when this was probably a couple of years ago, Susan. I sent you a Green Arrow figure, and she had you sign it for me, Kin. So I'm so excited. That's proudly displayed in my display case of Justice League memorabilia. So yeah, super excited to finally have you on the show.
And we were told over and over again that Green Arrow was the most requested character when they decided to go to Unlimited. But even before that, people would say, is Green Arrow going to appear on the show? I didn't know how popular, because, you know, I'm spending time watching Another World in General Hospital. I didn't know how popular Green Arrow was.
Well, here's the question I have for you guys. What? So I was watching some of there's a YouTube that says the best of the Green Arrow.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Susan. It was not the best of Wonder Woman, or was it?
It's okay.
For some reason, it was the best of the Green Arrow. And I thought, well, I've got to talk to these guys soon. So let me see what was the best of the Green Arrow. My question is that when I did it, it was probably, 20 years ago we did these things?
Yeah.
So my voice was a younger voice. And the question I ask is that cartoon voices for kids to, not be afraid, like, when they recreated Batman in the movies and Michael Keaton sounds like, I am the Batman, and all of that stuff. Like, even if I did the Green Arrow today, I would sound much differently because I've got a much more raspier voice and, like Al Pacino in, hoo-ha, back in with Michael Corleone. It was Michael, he was a different guy.
Totally.
So my question is that what they look for when they were doing that? That when they wanted a sort of a voice that would be sort of have something to it, like, sort of a wise guy, wisecracking Green Arrow, which is what turned out to be who it was. But if it was today, they would say that, we want a younger voice, right? Is that how it works?
I think they probably would for all of us, but I would say this. I think we were talking to one of the producers last week about the show and about Green Arrow, and he said he didn't really have an idea of what Green Arrow sounded like. And then they brought your voice in, and as soon as he heard your voice, he's like, that's Green Arrow. So I think our casting director, Andrea Romano, and our voice director, she must have heard something in you, whether it was young or old, or it didn't matter. There was something in you that captured the character, and that was it. She was like, that's the Green Arrow for this show.
Well, whatever. I think it was. No, I think it had to do with, a little bit of at the time, sort of the character I was playing on General Hospital at the time was sort of fast talking, wisecracking, sort of a guy that had a certain rhythm and a certain, sort of thing that might have been that hit the right note for them. So be it. There I sit today now as the Green Arrow.
Yeah, the Green Arrow. And also, wait a minute. I have something to refute here, because weren't you working on As the World Turns when we were doing this show? Weren't you in New York? You were in New York, I thought. And that's why I never met you.
No. I was doing General Hospital. I was at the over there in L.A. at the ArcLight there, where they shot the Warner Brothers thing.
Right. At the mall.
You weren't in the episodes. Then I left General Hospital. Then I went to New York, and then there were more episodes coming up. Like, I wasn't in a lot, they had an episode every week. So by the time they got her back around to me, I was in New York and doing another soap. So then I did it there. And then I did a couple of times down here in Fort Lauderdale.
Oh, okay. Yeah, our paths did not cross much. I mean, that's the sad part. We hardly worked together. I don't remember seeing you in the studio once, and that's a good thing, because I would have fangirled and been very embarrassed.
Well, you kind of did. The first time I met you, I was like, you were standing outside of my balcony. Like,
I was.
What can I help you? And
I know.
She said, I'm Wonder Woman to your Green Arrow. And I said, so? What is that?
He's not easily impressed.
Well, what?
You're not easily impressed. But although I think when I said Wonder Woman, you did look a little impressed. Okay, so Ken, when we have people on, we always talk about people's beginnings and origin stories and how they got started in the business of either writing, directing, because we've had everybody on. And so I'd love for the fans of yours to know your beginnings. You come from a show business family. I don't know if a lot of people know that your father was quite famous. And could you talk a little bit about how you got into show business?
Well, Susan, to tell you the truth, I was born on television. My father had a show called Two for the Money. And when my brother and I were born, my fraternal twin brother, we were wheeled right out onto television, and my father got Two for the Money. And so
I love it.
I have a picture. I'll more than be happy to send it to you. And there I am. I'm in the driver's seat in the car, this little King Midget car, and I'm looking at the camera. So I've basically been on television since 1953.
Wow. Yeah, a ham was born, as it were.
A ham arrived, yes. Yes.
So ever since then, I mean, because we've talked about this, you've always been enamored by show business. You've always had an actor inside of you. You wanted to do this since you were a little boy. And so can you just talk a little bit about how you got your start in show business, other than your dad and being exposed to it that way?
Well, in third grade, I did 3 plays, and it kind of came to me very easily. The arithmetic didn't, and geometry didn't, but learning lines and doing these plays came to me, and I thought, why go no further than third grade? I can start my career now. And I told my parents at the time that that's it. I'm done with school. I want to be in a professional acting class. And so they said, well, no, you're still be in school, but we'll find. So I started studying professionally in Hollywood on Doheny and that little actor's place, and then in West Hollywood. And in third grade, they were casting a kid to play Jesus as a boy, and I got in the mix, went through the all of the steps, and they gave me the part. And my father said, "No, why don't you try playing the part of a good student for a while before?" So my part as Jesus as a boy was nixed, and but that didn't deter me, because my brother and I had access to Super 8 cameras, and we ran around Hollywood making movies. So I ended up being a pretty good Joker, or Cesar Romero. I did the Joker. So, with full costumes we did the Magnificent Seven. We did Man from U.N.C.L.E. I played a pretty good a.k.a. So it was just a question of time before I was going to squeeze my way into making this a career.
And we should mention that you have a sister who is also in the business, Indy Schreiner, and a brother, Will Schreiner, who is very much in the business as a comedian and a host, and is still working. Your sister, not so much, but your brother's still in the business.
My sister did a couple of early television. She was part of not early television. She wasn't around in early days. She did things like that John Ritter show, Three's Companies, things like that.
Yeah, episodic television. Yeah.
But she went a different route. She chose to be have kids and stuff and get married.
Yeah.
And not dog it out there and look for work, and what we all did, chasing it down.
Okay, so can we talk about, I'm watching television one night, James, and $6 Million Man is on television. And I love watching old shows. And there, to my surprise and glee, was a young Kin Shriner in line at a checkout, line, in a checkout line in the show. And I immediately texted him, like, I didn't know you did $6 Million Man.
That was your first gig, I think, because I've got that on my list as well, Ken. That was your first official IMDb entry. Is that the first one that you were actually paid for then?
No. I was put under contract at Universal Studios as a contract player. I had tried to get under contract, as all most actors in LA do. It was a good deal. And they were looking for a kid to play Nick Nolte's son in Rich Man, Poor Man. And I got down to the wire with Greg Henry, the actor who got the part. And the guy who directed my screen test, Lou Antonio, the actor, I ran into him about 10 years ago, and he told me I directed your screen test for the Rich Man, Poor Man book 2. And they said, look, you're a little inexperienced, but we'd love to put you under contract here at Universal Studios. And I said, sign me up. And the first job was a scene with Gregory Peck in the movie MacArthur, where I was a blind soldier, number 3. General MacArthur, sir, is that you? Yes, son, it is. Well, I just heard on the radio, and I actually asked the director if I had to have the bandages on. Could I just play him like blind, like an actor? And they said, yeah. No, we really want the bandages. And so, unbeknownst to me, I mean, other than, of course, I was working with the great Gregory Peck, but when you're a young actor, you're just ready to go. And if I knew what I know about the great Gregory Peck today, of course I knew who he was. It's Gregory Peck, but it's a whole different ball game now of getting to say that I worked with him, as well as Raymond Burr, as well as Lee Majors and the $6 Million Man, as well as Robert Conrad and Baba Black Sheep, and the list goes on.
The best. I mean, anyone who's listening to this and is a fan of Kin's knows that he's like a huge TCM fan and watches all the old movies, as do I, and that's one of our bonds. But yeah, to sit with Gregory Peck, knowing what you know now, back then, what a conversation that would have been. But, coulda, woulda, shoulda. I mean, if only, right?
Yeah, if only. And even I went to a foot doctor and he told me that, I fixed Gregory Peck's foot. I said, really? What happened to his foot? He goes, a horse stepped on it. And I
of course.
Geez, if I'd known that back then, how's your foot, Mr. Peck? So, we didn't, you just knew what you knew. I mean, Perry Mason was just one of my favorite of all shows as a kid growing up. And when I got a chance to be on his new show called Kingston Confidential, and I was a kid that had been beaten up, and they put me, I was already on the ground, and then Kingston comes up to ask me a couple of questions. And so they got me set up on the ground, and they said, we're bringing Mr. Burr in now. And I'm thinking, Perry Mason is coming in.
Wow.
And so he comes to the set, and I look up 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 and I go, God, he's as big as a refrigerator. He was a big guy.
Uh-huh.
And he looks down and he says, why is that kid laying on the ground? Shouldn't he have a pad under him? I said, no, it's okay, Mr. Burr. I'm fine. I'm good here. So it was like, again, there I was exchanging words with, my boyhood idol, Perry Mason himself. So yeah, those are the stories. And however, Robert Conrad, who I idolized as a kid, he said, he's a little too tall. Get him out of that shot. So, for every good guy, there was a guy that was kind of a,
jerk,
kind of a, jerk, but anyway, so those are the stories of my contract days at Universal.
So you're working at Universal, you're under contract. How does General Hospital come into your life?
Well, the contract ends, and they were abolishing the contract system at Universal because it was kind of gotten to be it was, at that time, there was like Parker Stevens and me and Andrew Stevens, and, and it was kind of like they felt that, why do we have to use you contract players? So I think everybody decided it was time to abolish the contract thing. And so, I then moved and I did 8 is Enough, which was a guest star spot. So I moved to that guest star category, which is where you want to be as a young actor. Then you're on your way to a quote, which doesn't exist anymore. But all of that stuff was, your steps. And then I was asked to come in and talk to Tom Donovan about a part on General Hospital. And he said, yeah, we want to bring on a character. Blah, blah. And I had extensive training in soap opera from my acting coach because she was on Young and the Restless. And so doing a soap opera was something that seemed like second nature to me because we worked on camera in this class in the 70s. So I was familiar with it all. And so I never even really auditioned. I didn't read for Scotty. I just got, okay, you show up and we're going to do a couple of shows. And then if the character works with Peter Hansen and it's a deal, then we're going to, bring him on full time. And so I went through those steps. I did a couple of shows and they said, yeah, we're going to give you a contract. And you're in. And then it
So
became.
you didn't audition? You just did a couple, you were like brought in, let's do a couple of shows and see if it works out?
Yeah, there was no audition. The shows were
Wow.
audition.
Wow. That's incredible.
And well, but it was live then. It was a live television. It was live on tape. So you kind of were thrown into it. And, Scotty Baldwin was just invented. He was just whipped up by me with 2 shows. I just whipped up this sort of, I knew what he should look like. I knew his look. And, I knew where we were going to go with it through the wardrobe and how, and they did tell me after I got the contract, they said, don't cut your hair anymore, because was kind of had a lot of military work, that was very popular. I did Once an Eagle, I did MacArthur, I did all this stuff. So they felt that he should be, and then thus those 70s hairdos were born.
Yeah.
I'll say. But you had a lot of freedom to create the character like that. I don't know if that exists today, where you as Kin can help form this character. Like
Well,
you said, wardrobe and things like that. You knew who this guy was, and you were given the freedom to create him.
Well, but it kind of was like at the time, the wardrobe guy who said, "Hey, Ken, I want to take you down to Cy DeVore, which was the biggest Hollywood men's clothing store on Hollywood Boulevard, and we want to get your look." And I go, "Well, okay, I got an idea. What about And I basically borrowed Robert Redford from 3 Days at the Condor, a little of Rich Man, Poor Man, Nick Nolte. I was just piecing together a costume of what I thought would be cool, and that was where I started with it, and then went from there.
There's so many soap operas you were on. I'm curious because I see it all the time, and I was going through a list because I was primarily Another World, Days of Our Lives, and General Hospital watcher, but I noticed there's so much crossover. Obviously, people like Wallace Kurth, who played Justin Kiriakis on Days, was Ned Quatermain on General Hospital. Stephen Nichols, Tamara Braun, Matthew Ashford, Teo Penglis, who's been on my show before, the great Joe Mascolo, all have done the crossovers between Days and General Hospital. You've obviously done other shows like Young and the Restless, like Bold and the Beautiful, like Port Charles, and As the World Turns. Is that something where do the executives at the network say, hey, we know we're not going to be using Scotty for a little while. Hey, we need a doctor over here on Bold and the Beautiful. We can use him. How does that cross-pollination work from your standpoint as an actor?
Well, they lose interest in the character you're playing, and then you leave the show. And then another show says, hey, he's got a lot of juice. People love him. Maybe he could come over here and play, Keith Morrissey on As the World Turns. We'll make him, he's going to be involved with Martha Byrne. I bet they'll be good together. Blah, blah, blah. It's all predicated on if eventually writers lose interest in characters, and that's when you scramble for another show or another job or time to go. So that's where you don't really have that control. You go, well, let me whip up a new guy, and then you whip another guy up, and you go, well, let's not make him too much like. I did a show called Rituals, which was a first nighttime soap opera, and it was 5 day a week with Tina Louise and Marty Markham and Felice Sampler, and the head writer from General Hospital, one of the writers from General Hospital, was creating this show, and he came to me and he said, Ken, we want to put you on Rituals. What do you got in mind? And I said, well, how about this? The guy's obsessed with I Love Lucy. He has an old car in his living room. He's an artist. He walks around sanding cars, parts of cars, because he's going to turn the car art in, and he's an artist. That's what you want, right? He goes, yeah, I love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. So that guy got whipped up into a show that was fun to do because it was a character that I, came up with and said, yeah, he's always, he's working on it. He's an artist. He's got an idea for this kind of, he wanted to make, body car parts, like
Into
at a
art.
dentist, the grill, and then you have the wiring, and it's an orthopedic, it's a dent, it's like braces. So I had all these ideas that, and I had a writer that was willing to say, I like it. I like the fact that he has this old card that he's obsessed with I Love Lucy episodes. He still thinks that, all of it, when you're on the same page with the head writer and the producers, there's nowhere better to be. When you're not on that page, you're fucked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I with all the different people you've worked with and all these parts we just mentioned, Scotty Baldwin, Jeff Bardwell, Keith Massey, Dr. Brian Carey, who is your favorite female co-star to work with, and why is it Lynn Herring?
The Lynn Herring has Lynn has the exact rhythm, and she's one step ahead, like I am, of most things. So her persona, what she does, works very well with me because you're cooking, like, when Cary Grant and Irene Dunn or whoever, William Powell and Myrna Loy, you can't question you could throw Lynn and I in a room without a script and we'll come up with something that will be entertaining. So there's where you have that advantage with somebody like that. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, Martha Byrne, Maura West, and some of the other women that I've had Jackie Zeman. Jackie was couldn't be better. So that's kind of the story,
Well, can we talk a little bit about, and I know that you've been asked a gazillion times, but can we talk a little bit about back in the day when you and Jeannie Francis, and Laura, because that changed daytime. You and Jeannie as a couple, and that people take it for granted now, but it was a big deal that you, as these young kids, were driving story. And you were also involved with older people. It was all generational. You and your, Peter Hansen and Susan and all of these people were working together. Can you just give us a glimpse, because we'll never know what that was like, and can you just tell your audience and the people listening what it was like working with Jeannie and Tony and Jackie and Gloria Monty, who was the executive producer at the time?
Yes. I have said this, when these kids were trapped at Aunt Edna's or their mother's house and General Hospital, my soap is on, be quiet. And all of a sudden, there was a young girl who was their age and had a lot of problems, kind of like these kids started to pay attention to General Hospital because they were like, wait a minute, that I relate to her. She's, confused. Whoa, who's the boyfriend? He's good looking. Oh, Scotty Baldwin, I like it. Who's this crazy Luke? What's his business? So before you know it, and then who's the little fiery redhead that's causing all this trouble? Before you knew it, there was these four characters that were young, that were driving story and driving kids to start talking, about it, which then led to it just going, unbeknownst to us. The story I always tell is that after about a year of doing General Hospital, I came down to Fort Lauderdale with Jeannie. And I said, hey, Jeannie, there's this great restaurant called Stan's on the water. Let's go. And I picked her up. She was staying with her aunt. And we went to dinner, and we were sitting there having dinner. And a waitress came up and said, would it be okay if a couple of people came up and got your autograph? And we were like, well, autograph, sure. When we looked up, there was a line down the block and around the corner. And I was like,
wow.
and I turned to Jeannie and I said, we might be onto something, you know?
I mean, to be fair, I can't imagine being in that restaurant as a fan as I was and seeing you and Jeannie over there eating, your chicken parm, whatever you were eating. But I have to say, Ken, because I've been out with you many times in LA and you still have people coming up for your autograph. I mean, I don't think I've ever been out in public with you where people aren't asking,
a guy at the gym today turned to me and said, you're on a soap opera, right? And I said, yes. And he goes, how come you guys never age? I go, well, we made a little deal, years ago.
With the devil.
I said,
with the
thank
devil.
you so much. And he held the door, and I said, there you go. You just held the door for Scotty Baldwin. Good luck. Thank you. Yeah, it can still carry through, but, it was a great ride, a great run, and that's that, it was fun. It was a fun time in those days. We when everybody was watching General Hospital and you were on it, and I had a bus follow me off Wilshire Boulevard all the way to Robin Matson's house, played Heather Weber, and I got out of the car and the whole bus was asking me what was going on General Hospital tomorrow. I said, you guys are off route. And he said, yeah, I know. We saw you. We followed you. A whole bus.
Oh my
and I go, when you get an RTD bus to follow you somewhere, you're on a hit show.
You've done so many great shows too. And I again, for those of you who are listening, we're going to bring it back to Justice League, I promise. But I've got to ask because someone just made this comparison recently. Obviously, you were on an episode of The Love Boat, which I grew up watching as an 80s kid. Someone made this brilliant comparison because White Lotus is all the rage now on HBO Max. And someone said, The Love Boat was in the 80s what White Lotus is today. Because you had this rotating cast of characters in this exotic location. And it kind of dawned on me, like, yeah, they're not wrong, really. Growing up as a fan of The Love Boat, was that an enjoyable experience for you to be on that show?
The thing about my acting coach told me when I was doing The Love Boat, and she said that The Good Earth, that movie, The Good Earth, the original one, Academy. What's the actress's name? Louise Rayner. Louise Rayner was on that episode. She was playing sisters, and all I remember is my acting coach Lillian Senkin. You are so lucky to be working on that show. She is such a movie star and was a movie star. And like, oh my God. And so I was very aware of her and how she was doing and what she was doing. And, I had a silly storyline where I was trying to get my wife pregnant by, is it time? Let's see, let's go. It was a silly thing. But the fact that I happened to be on that episode with that remarkable and aware of it at the time, and introduced myself to her and said, hi, big fan from, not that I really knew what The Good Earth was, that movie, like we do now because of TCM, but in the time I knew that she was royalty. And so that was the big deal of that episode.
One of the things I love about Ken is that you can ask him questions about The Love Boat and he'll remember it like that. So many people we ask about like stories from the past and they're like, yeah, I don't really remember. I like vaguely, but Ken, he's like, I remember being on the set. I remember being.
So I do.
I know you remember everything. That's why I keep telling you should write a book.
Here's what Gavin McLeod had for lunch. Captain Steubing was eating this at the time. And the recall is extraordinary. My gosh.
Yeah, he's great. He's great about that. There's no shortage of stories with Ken. That's like the beauty of having a drink or dinner with Ken Schreiner. You get great stories.
So for those of you listening.
These shows, I mean, as an actor, you're not just there. You're there to take it all in. You're there to be a part of and go, okay, this, I say this all the time. I said this the other day. I don't know if this means anything, but I said this I was sitting with Marcus and Will DeFry, and I said, if you were in a scene with Al Pacino and you had the first line and you said, I think Eddie ratted us out. Eddie ratted us out? Now, if you have the first line and he responds, you're off to the races. You're now acting with Al Pacino. If Al has the first line, I think Eddie ratted us out. Really? Do you think Eddie? It's like, so once you're in, you're in. That's what actors never seem to understand. They go, I get so nervous working with so-and-so. They're just as nervous. Somebody's got to kick this baby off, right?
Absolutely.
Am I right?
Yeah, you're right.
So even if you were sitting with Robert De Niro and you, Jesus, how do I? You just go. So I think the lesson I've learned is there is no right way. It's just 5, 4, 3, 2, like a soap opera. You just get into it. There is no excuses. You just go and see where it goes.
That's great advice, actually.
It is.
That's really good. I want to ask you to kind of bring this back to Justice League. I was told, I can't remember who told me the story, that they said you were so excited that you actually showed up dressed very similar to what Green Arrow would wear for your first day of recording. Is that a internet myth, or did that actually happen?
I think it's kind of a combo package.
Okay.
I think, I'm not saying I was in tights.
But you're not saying you weren't.
I'm not saying I wasn't.
How big were you ever, did you pick up comics? Because I know a lot of the voice actors on the show are both ways, like Phil Lamar and Phil Morris, huge comic book fans, been reading since they were a kid. Some were very casual. It's like, yeah, I read Archie's and I knew kind of what they were. Some were like, I had no idea. Where do you land on that spectrum as a person who didn't grow up reading comic books, or you had a couple, or just were a huge fan?
Listen, it's what I just said about, I walked into a room full of 10 actors that one was Batman, one was Superman, one was somebody. There was about 10 people, and there I was now, the Green Arrow. And they said, okay, we're going to start, and off to the races we went. And from there, I didn't know anything about the Green Arrow other than the little backstory, that his backstory of who he was, what he once was. But none of that really matters. As I said, it's you whip up something that you think might work, and unless they stopped you flat and said, "What the fuck? That's not the Green Arrow. Get another actor in here," then you don't know. It's just. I said, wow, that guy has a pretty good Superman voice. That guy's pretty good as the Batman. Oh, it's my line. Well, Green Lantern, what are you doing on my turf? I'm down here to get rid of you, and there you go. You're just playing these scenes. So there is no, there wasn't a hell of a lot of research. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I was curious how much backstory you brought in with you versus what you took from the direction, everything like that. So yeah, that you answered my question perfectly, and you almost got verbatim your very first line of initiation too just now, because you even say, "What are you, got a hornet on my turf?" So again, incredible recall, Ken Schreiner. Wow.
And I mean, I have to say, watching him, he really is Green Arrow. I mean, he really is. Perfect casting. Perfect.
And didn't you do some voice for the Arrow TV show? Or was it Gotham?
Yeah.
And you got to do the voice on there because of your work on Justice League. That's I think really cool too.
Oh yeah, that was a huge payday. They paid money over there on that Arrow, and I don't even know where that came from. I got a call, and the guy was like, "Well, we got a phony Green Arrow running around town, so we thought maybe your voice might work for the phony guy." And I said, okay, and I spit out a couple of lines, and then that was it. And then a month or two later, they said, "Oh, we want him back again to do something else." And then I did it again, and next thing I was sitting at Mastro's Steakhouse living it up.
Yeah, that Warner Brothers CW money there. That's the way to go. It's so cool because, like I said, there are so many toys out. You got the figure that Susan had. I sent to Susan that you signed for me, but they've got the giant 10-inch figures out. There's a Green Arrow on a motorcycle. There's all sorts of cool toys out from this toy line that you, as I always say for Susan and for obviously the great Kevin Conroy, you are the voice of Green Arrow to so many people when they open up a comic book nowadays. that's got to be an amazing feeling to know that you influenced an entire generation of comic book fans in that way.
Well, I think there was a kid once that was a big fan that said, "Oh my God, I watch the Justice League all the time." And, "Oh, you are the Green Arrow." I think I got one kid saying that to me once about 15, 20 years ago. And it was like, it was nothing compared to the, General Hospital, but it was like, oh, well, at least there's one fan out there, one kid that's like, I don't really know that how many kids really watch the Justice League and would come up and say, that you would now grown up and say, I used to watch the Justice League all the time. And I'd recognize that voice anywhere. You're the Green Arrow. I've never had that happen. I'm sure that's happened to you, Susan.
Well, but that's because you don't do Comic-Cons, and that's the thing. There is a huge audience, massive audience out there for Green Arrow fans, who adore you. And when we told people you were coming on today, I mean, people were so excited because you don't do a lot of interviews where you're talking about Green Arrow, and people miss you. Like that whole community of fans, like James, who was a kid watching it on television. You're Green Arrow. You're their Green Arrow, and I hope you know that there is like this massive fan base for your character and for your voice doing that character.
Well,
in addition to Scotty, of course.
Well, but the thing that I got kind of gypped out of was the fact that because it was so much fun when I was sitting in the room with all the different actors, when I went to New York, I had to do it alone in an audio booth, and I had to do it alone in Fort Lauderdale. So the ride of being with all the other superheroes, was a lot more fun than just me in a booth, But I was in Manhattan, and I had to get to a 4:00 taping, and it was bumper to bumper traffic, and I didn't know what to do because they were going to do me separately, and it had to be at this one studio. And one of these rickshaw guys goes by, and I say, "Hey," he goes, "You need a ride?" I said, "Yeah, down to like 43rd. And he goes, "That's a long way." He said, I don't care. I got to be there. So I took this rickshaw ride all the way through Manhattan on the way to be the Green Arrow. And I thought, well, it doesn't get any better than this.
That's great.
Right?
That's great.
I mean, you're on the way to being a superhero. You're in a rickshaw in Manhattan in the back. And you just finished shooting As the World Turns,
Pretty great. If
double your money, as they say, 2 for the money.
Full circle. We've come full circle, James.
Full circle.
For those recordings that you were in studio, and I think it's funny now because obviously, Susan and I have talked about this, other voice actors that once COVID happened, that's how everyone was doing their recordings alone in a booth. They'd call you in separately. And I know even my conversations with Kevin Conroy, he said doing the video games, it was a far different experience because you're just in there by yourself. Maybe the director's there. Susan, when you recorded Masters of the Universe with Kevin Smith, same thing for you. It was just you, and across the Zoom screen was Kevin giving you direction. But it was a different thing. But for those episodes, those early ones, Ken, when you were in the room, I know Susan has talked before about, oh, look, it's Powers Booth next to me. And you had some great talent in those episodes with you when you were doing Initiation and Fearful Cemetery in that first season. Are there any standout memories for you of doing those group recordings?
I remember when Robert Forster was in one of the, and I said, "Oh my God, Robert Forster! He's got a new surge in his career, and he couldn't have been nicer. He gave everybody pens, like." I just went, "Hey, you guys, thanks for it. This was great fun." And he had like a gift for everybody. It was just a very, great guy who just was, happy to be a part of it and happy to have, I guess, his career picked up again and back doing stuff that, he probably wouldn't have been doing if old Quentin hadn't, dusted him off.
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, James, you'd walk into those rooms and there's Ed Asner and, Ephraim Zimbalist Jr., it was who's who in
Yeah.
the Mark Hamill. I mean, it was crazy. And everyone was happy to be there and everyone was getting the same amount of money, I should add. It wasn't like this one was getting 15 grand for showing up and this one was getting 2 grand. We all got the same amount of money.
Wow.
Right,
Very, very egalitarian.
It was a fun time. The funny thing I remember is when we took a break and we all went to the bathroom and I was standing there peeing next to Batman and I thought, this is kind of funny, right? We're in there playing these guys, superheroes. Here we are just now just taking a little pee break, and it just seemed odd to me. And now, look, I probably peed next to Luke Spencer or many soap opera characters in the bathroom at General Hospital. But for somehow, just peeing next to the Batman seemed weird.
Did it seem weird because this was a tight stay for you, Ken? Was that why?
Yeah, I had a problem with those freaking tights. Yes, you're right.
But it just, to be a fly in the wall.
I like when somebody builds on my material.
I do what I can. And to be a fly in the wall, and not necessarily a fly in the men's room wall, but to be a fly in the studio wall when all this was going on. I wish, nowadays, production companies and studios are very conscientious about getting all this behind the scenes material, the making of, be it for the Blu-ray or for, deleted scenes. Gosh, I wish someone would have been able to capture some of these moments with all of you characters in the voice booth and getting those shots. But it was unheard of to think of back then that anyone would care about seeing that. Now, obviously, we know, to Susan's point earlier, Ken, there is such a following. And I know so many people when I showed them my Green Arrow figure, they're, how did you get that? I didn't think he did conventions. So at some point, we may need to get you on the convention circuit and you could double dip between your General Hospital fandom and your Green Arrow fandom.
Yeah, but I don't think that you sit around telling stories, do you? Or do you just sign autographs?
No,
stories that you guys are looking at.
No, but there are panels and you get to do the panels and that's storytelling and people get to ask questions and it's brilliant. Yeah, we need to get him.
But I also think the other thing I was going to say about the casting, Andrea, that when we did one pass at the stuff when I was with all the actors, and then she would come back and say, okay, you can go. She would release certain characters, and then other characters had like a couple of speeches that they had to like redo again.
Yeah.
And I had like the most speeches to redo. And I was like, she goes, it's just Ken, make it, she knew how to do it that, she kind of helped, I guess, in the, as you know, she kind of directs and kind of gives you what they really want.
Yes.
If you make it too much your own or you take too much time, that's where, well, if it isn't the great green, blah, blah, blah. So right. They don't want to, they want it. There's a pace that I understood quickly as we went on. I had less and less pickups, but in the beginning I thought, well, they're picking up everything pretty much, because I didn't really get how the rhythm and how to do this, because I had never done it before. I've never done any kind of voiceover acting. Can
you imagine, James? Can you imagine being thrown into that?
I can't even believe it, because obviously everyone's first voice gig is this. It's got to be someone's first voice gig. But man, because you're such a natural, Ken. Like every time I listen to it, I'm like, gosh, they couldn't have found a better person to play you. So knowing that story now, it kind of blows my mind, honestly.
Well, as I say then to Susan, if I started at the top, I might as well just quit there. Where am I going to go? Running around trying to do voices for like, men were going in, it just seems like, have you ever done voiceover work? Yes, absolutely. I was the voice of the Green Arrow. End of story. That's it. Case closed.
Do you know how Andrea heard about you? Do you know why she chose you?
No clue.
Because we have to ask her.
Yeah.
James, that's like number one. I really need that answered because
I just got a call that said, would you be interested in being the voice of the Green Arrow? And I knew nothing except yes, sure.
Wow. And that is incredible. And honestly, I've said it before. I mean, I was nervous walking into those rooms, and I had done a bunch of stuff before, and I was always terrified. And I hated when they would do pickups, and you'd be like Ken was saying, people would be released, and then you'd have to stay back because you had to do your lines again. It was the worst. It was the worst. But I can't imagine walking into those rooms having never done it. I just can't imagine it. So hats off to you, Ken, because you nailed it. It is just brilliant. I mean, I really think you were meant to do that part because you are so natural. You know, there's just no performance. It's just, you are just saying those lines. It's just brilliant.
Yeah, but it's coming off of a soap opera where you're doing it all the time. It's not, it's a little easier. You know, you kind of are thrown into, once you do live television, you're just kind
That's
of
true.
either going or not. I mean, there's no, you know, there wasn't, am I getting this right? You know, is anybody, you know, that wasn't, this, you know, this was to me, a live radio show, which was like that. I thought we all have mics. We're all going to just do this like a radio show.
Right.
And we did it that way until the pickups came.
Womp womp.
And the ADR.
And the ADR.
All the ADR afterwards. But I don't think, I think no one got electrocuted still more than George so far. I think even Ken, who had those electric arrows, he didn't get electrocuted nearly as much as George got in the first two seasons.
Superman got the most electrocution. Yep.
As we're wrapping this up, because I don't want to keep you too much longer, it's deeply appreciative of the time you've given us already. But I just kind of want to say, huge fan, obviously, from, as I said, my grandma moved in with me shortly after my grandfather and father died. So I would always sit next to her and come home from school, and we'd watch her stories, as she said. And that's how I kind of got into General Hospital and Days of Our Lives and Young and the Restless and all those. So it's such a treat to have you on, especially knowing that you're in Justice League. Like I said, the voice of Green Arrow for a couple of generations of people out there. I just, like I said, I'm just very grateful for your time. And Susan is your friend, so I'll give Susan last word on this.
Yes, thank you, James. It's nice to have been on the show. I know we did this before. I told maybe some of the similar stories, but, you know, maybe I jazzed them up or tweaked them a little bit better. Susan knows most of my stories, but not all of them.
I know. I'm still, there's still some I haven't heard, but even when I've heard them, the audience can't see my smile, but there's just something about being in your presence. You know, I adore you. And, I love hearing your stories. It never, ever, ever gets old, ever.
Well, it's kind of like my brother's joke. I may have told this story before, but please don't stop me because I'd like to hear it again. So, right. Yes, I can tell the same story. I'll just tweak it a little bit for you. Okay,
well, we appreciate the stories. We appreciate the sweetness and the funny and all of that. And just I'll talk to you soon. And thank you for doing this.
My pleasure.
And that's a wrap with you. Thank you so much.
This is the Green Arrow signing off.
Thanks, Green Arrow.
All right. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
There he goes. For all of you who constantly asked for Green Arrow, we gave you Green Arrow. Ken Schreiner himself. Wow, I just, again, one of those names that I knew early on, we got to have him on for Justice League Unlimited.
I have to say, I'm surprised that he wore the tights. That took me by surprise.
It was a choice.
It was a choice. And he committed. That was so fun. And he is such a fun guy. And he loves show business. He loves telling stories. He loves that's his, he's somebody who's so proud of the legacy. And he doesn't take it for granted. And he's just a gem. He's like nobody else. He's a true character. And I often say to him, when you walk into the room, the party starts because he has such a relish for life.
Yeah.
And so I'm so glad we were able to do this. And, this was fun. And I hope the fans love it as much as we did because he is Green Arrow and he is Scotty Baldwin and all those other crazy characters he's played.
It's funny because I was watching, something came up on YouTube, but I ended up watching a clip of Johnny Carson. And they had, they had some guest stars. They had, I can't remember who was on there, but like Don Rickles was on, and then another clip came up, and it was Carol Burnett was on. And I was thinking, as we're doing this talk with Ken, I kept looking at him like he, for me, represents that classic Hollywood glitz and glamour, just the way he carries himself, his presence. He is like just that Hollywood icon kind of person I think about just in his persona. He just kind of has that radiating from him, which I loved.
He truly does. And that's why, like, when we would go out in Los Angeles, heads turn. It's a little weird because it's, as a woman, you're just like, oh, are they looking at me? And it's like, no, they aren't. They're looking at Ken Schreiner, who was Scotty Baldwin. And he does have that. He very much, you nailed it. He very much has that Hollywood glamour attached to him. And it's just something, you either have it or you don't. I mean, he just has always had it. And it's in his genes, I mean, his parents, his dad, certainly, he and his brother and his sister, they all have it. It's a little sparkle. And it's wonderful to be around.
Yeah, just that little touch of Hollywood class. And I love seeing his social media posts where he's in his favorite steakhouse and he's got a martini in front of him.
Yeah, always.
Just super cool. The guy is amazing. And that's why I would love it if he would do conventions, because I would line up and plunk my money down to, say hi in person and get my Green Arrow signed on the Arrow Cycle and take a picture. So Ken, if you're listening to this after we send it to you, keep that in mind, buddy. You might want to start doing some conventions. I think it would. I think you'd have a blast.
He would have a blast, and also he'd be so surprised by how much love there is out there for the character and for him doing this character, because he doesn't know. It's like, I always can have a conversation with the fans because I go to these conventions and they tell me their stories, and so I want that for him because he's so beloved as this character, and rightfully so. He nailed it. Anyway, I'm thrilled it happened. I'm thrilled for the fans who get to listen to this episode. And we didn't ask him about his social media, but he is on Twitter. He is, I don't know about Twitter anymore. I'm not sure, but he is definitely on Instagram. And he posts pictures and videos on Instagram, so you can always catch him there. He is definitely there.
Yeah, just search for Kin, Kin Schreiner, Shriner. Look for him there, and I think it's at the Ken Schreiner, maybe on one of the two, either Instagram or Twitter. I can't remember. And then it's Ken Schreiner on the other one. Just look for him.
And he has a check mark because he's the real deal. So speaking of how to find people, how do we find you on social media, mister?
Very easy to find. You can go to facebook.com/geek2me-radio. You can also find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at geek2me-radio. It's TO Me Radio. And then go to youtube.com where I'm trying to get over that 10,000 subscriber mark. We're closing in. So to all you who may have just found me recently, thank you very much. Subscribe to me there. Hit the little bell notification because we go live every Sunday night with a live radio show on 550 AM KTRS, but you can stream us on YouTube and Facebook as well. If you hit that bell, you'll get a little notification every time we go live on air, and you can tune in and see what guests I've got joining me each week.
And it's wonderful content. These shows that you do, the live radio, all these things that you do, including our show here, it's free content. And so how you can show your support to us is by subscribing to James's YouTube channel, to our podcast, leave a review, because that's a thank you to us. And we so deeply appreciate you tuning in. If you want to find me, Susan Eisenberg 1, on Blue Sky and Instagram, and also my website, susaneisenbergvoice.com. And there you can find out where I'm going to be, if I have a Comic-Con coming up. And you can also email me, and I will respond. It may take a little while, but I will respond. I always get back to people. I try to anyway. So that's a wrap for us, another one in the can. And I'm so pleased, and I hope you are too. I hope the fans will just, love this episode. And please stay tuned because, as I always say, the conversation will continue.